Greetings from TV AIBD. Hi, this is Philomena Pragasam with Connect with AIBD. And today I'm talking to a very interesting personality in the broadcasting industry. He happens to be the founder and managing director of Whiteways Systems Private Limited, situated in Singapore, and is none other than Mr. Aale Raza. Mr. Aale Raza is known to be a thought leader, a great visionary, and Whiteways is a company that's leading systems integration company that's actually focusing on providing solutions to broadcasters. And very interesting gentleman here. He's also an award winner. In 5 years ago, he was awarded the Special Achievement Award by Promising SME 500 in Singapore. So without much ado, let's welcome Mr. Aale Raza. It's good to meet you today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and it's really wonderful because today we are not just going to talk about television, but we're also going to touch on the radio industry itself. And even as I speak, we've been going through, the industry itself has been going through quite a bit of challenge. So I'd like to ask you, do you think traditional media should actually be more emphasized in today's world?
Okay, so there are many in Asia, as you know, Ms. Philo, there are many different kind of countries. There are some countries that are very highly developed, like Singapore, Korea, Hong Kong, etc. There are some that are medium. I mean, they are developed in the cities, but not yet fully developed in the smaller towns and villages. And then there are some underdeveloped, a number of underdeveloped countries. So we can't lump them all together. It has to be, each country has to have their own, they are on their journey towards development. And depending on where you are on the journey, you have to, have your policies, and you have to have your this thing. Second thing is that as far as traditional broadcast is concerned, I think it's still very, very important. The pandemic has shown that the traditional broadcast is very important. The only mass medium where you can reach people with very critical, important messages is television and radio. There is no other. Social media is great and all that, but it has its limitations, and it does not have the reach, the kind of reach that the media, that television, radio has still, even now. And this is especially true when you go to the smaller towns and villages, where people don't own, I mean, some of the underdeveloped countries, people don't own smartphones, and the GSM network is not yet available in many places and all that. So if you don't have a smartphone, then you don't have social media. If you don't have social media, you're cut off totally. Then you're only dependent on radio and TV.
Absolutely, Mr. Raza. And I think connectivity is still an issue, as we could see from the pandemic, right? Many countries, if they have the connectivity, they don't have the technology, or they don't have the medium, so to speak. So definitely smartphones are needed, even if you have connectivity, in order for everyone to be getting the information. Radio became so important. What was your experience with broadcasters like, Mr. Raza?
Yeah, so radio is changing, as you know. You are a radio personality. You know very well that radio is changing very rapidly. Many of the radio companies that we work with, they have reinvented themselves as a multimedia company. So they don't just have radio. They have radio audio stream going towards a traditional radio system, which which you can listen to on FM or on AM. But on top of that, they also have a stream going on social media and their YouTube and website and OTT and all those things. They not just show audio, they also show video. And they make a great impact on social media by coming up with lots of things, lots of knowledge, lots of information, lots of quiz, etc., etc. So they have reinvented, many of the radio stations in the developed countries have reinvented themselves as a multimedia organization, and they have widened their reach, and they have the DJs have become hot favorites, celebrities. In fact, some of them are bigger celebrities than the television actresses and actors and actresses. So I mean, the radio people have to understand that the end customer has changed. The consumption of radio has changed. The way people listen to radio has changed.
So that's interesting, because you talked about the visual, you talked about multimedia additions that are coming into radio. So there's always a debate, because when radio becomes visual, then is it radio?
Yeah. So that's why I said I use the word reinvent. Mm-hmm. They are not just a radio company anymore, not just a radio. They are a radio company also. But on top of being a radio company, they are a multimedia agency, which is touching the viewers by audio in the traditional radio sense, the way we used to have radios in our houses many years ago, and we used to receive audio broadcast on radio and listen to it. That is there. It's there. That audience is there. But on top of that, they also have an audience on social media. On top of that, they have an audience on YouTube, on OTT, etc., etc. And they keep on building that audience. They use a variety of ways and variety of gimmicks to build that audience. And then with that, once that audience is in their hand, then they go to the advertiser and say, hey, this is what I have. And the advertiser finds it extremely interesting.
I mean, this sounds exciting because what you're saying is that organizations need to, or radio operators need to actually have to use all the platforms that are available, right? And if you look at people today, many years ago, a person can be a radio personality and you are just happy to listen to his voice. You don't have to look at the person's face, because radio is supposed to be the theater of theater of the mind. It's a golden voice that is everything. But today we live in, I think this started during the age of video, when on TV, when we have to watch songs, not just listen.
Listen to songs, right?
Yeah, so used to see who's singing, and the singers became like actors. So I guess this is something that has happened. We have become very visual people, and so it's interesting to note that radio has actually taken a reinventive role in this, becoming more visual, and perhaps this would help the industry further. But what about during the pandemic, Raza? What was it like, Because if you look at remote broadcasting, radio itself happens to be one of the first mediums that's able to conduct remotely. Yeah. So what was your experience like?
Yeah. I mean, eye-opening, mind-boggling, really. Let me explain to you. First thing is that you cannot, the reach of the radio is unrivaled. You set up one AM transmitter and it can reach 250 kilometers. One transmitter, single transmitter. Unbelievable. Nothing else. Nobody that I know can do this sort of. Second thing is that podcast. I mean, podcast, I don't know whether you have heard a podcast or you have done a podcast. Podcasts are the game changers. You can listen to them anytime you want, and it's a theater of the mind, as you rightly pointed out. I mean, that actually, when you said that, that gave me the idea. So podcasts have become a very integral part of many of the radio this thing. And also they have also reached out to cover many of the newspaper reports and all that. The third thing on which happened during the pandemic is the education. Many of the poorer countries, they don't have the smartphones, they don't have the computer, they don't have internet. In fact, they don't even have electricity in some cases, right? So the only medium that reaches them is radio, nothing else. They don't have any other medium. So some of the governments very smartly started using radio to try to educate the kids who are sitting in a quarantine at home. Of course, then the other thing was, dispensing medical advice, giving them the true picture of what is happening and what they should do in case of a medical emergency, etc., etc. So many, there's so many things. And I believe, personally, after hearing all the radio people, what they told me, is that they managed to save a lot of lives.
Empowering broadcasters worldwide. Connect with TV AIBD now, connecting the world.
And I think you yourself, you've worked with Papua New Guinea recently in Goroka, right? And you were actually putting up an AM transmitter. And I guess your story comes from there on how you were able to empower the community. Do tell us about what was it like in Goroka, Papua New Guinea?
So early on, when the pandemic struck, the government of Papua New Guinea was wanting to reach all the remote communities. The remote communities in Papua New Guinea are really remote. Means there's no road, there is not even a jungle path. You have to, what they tell me is that you have to cross a river to get to the village, and the river is infested with crocodiles.
Oh my, okay.
Yeah, no. So the only lifeline for those kind of very, very remote villages is the radio. There's nothing else. They don't have a television set. They don't have any smartphones. They don't have a GSM network, nothing. And why radio? Because it can travel long distances. So that's why they decided to set up a AM transmitter, because it can carry long distances and it can carry a huge, big area of about the circumference about 250 kilometers, which is pretty big. So they placed the order and all that. And by the time they placed the order, the pandemic was in full force. so the factory was closed. So, but somehow we managed to tell them that, no, this is very important. It's very urgent, etc., etc. Somehow we managed to ship the goods to them. It was very difficult, time consuming, and the goods reached, and then they were offloaded from the vessel. Then somehow we managed to bring it to the Goroka is a hill
place.
It's a hilltop. So where they managed to, they were, fortunately, the only thing that helped us is that they already had a tower, pretty high tower. It was already in place, so which was great. Then we set up the transmitter, and of course it works.
This transmitters that you have set up has really, really gone a long way in building a society. Raza.
And fortunately, the Honorable Minister has stated in his statement that they will, after the success of this transmitter, they will set up many other transmitters to cover the rest of the countryside, which is still uncovered even today.
So perhaps this has been an eye-opener for governments as well. And during the pandemic, we noted that traditional media has made such a comeback. And this is because a lot of fake news was happening.
Yes.
There was a lot of infodemics. And I think when you work with remote societies, Aale, you also notice that there are a lot of self-medication and things. And that's why governments felt that it was so imperative to give the right information. So what was your experience like with these remote countries that you worked with?
Well, yeah, it's not just the remote. I mean, the information warfare is going on between the people on the right and the people on the wrong for a number of years now. And this is especially true in remote localities where there's no way to check the information. If you have access to internet, and you hear something, you can at least go and check on the internet whether this piece of news is true or not. But if you don't have access to internet, there's no way to check. Then many of the broadcasters, they came out. One of the broadcasters I know, I'm sorry, I can't name him. They came up with a funny show on TV where they made fun of all the, the fake news. Hey, you heard something, somebody said this. Oh, really? So that to dispel the notion that to tell the viewers in the media, educating the viewers that this is fake news and this is real news. Parody.
So it's a parody,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
So I think this is an ingenious idea, because I've heard people saying, oh, we should have truth-only radio, or we should have a radio which is only talking about the real thing. But here's something, it's the first time I'm hearing about a parody. So this is quite an interesting strategy. Raza, your work is so exciting, because I know you as an engineer and a person who works with, AI, right? And then a lot of studios and, setups for television as well. I guess that's what some time back Whiteways was famous for. And this is also interesting for television, because when you look at TV and the inability of broadcasters, I think radio, you can still manage with phone calls, to get people. You can interview some expert through a phone, right?
Yeah.
This is possible. But when you talk about television, the challenge is already there, whereby we were not allowed to go out. And this is where, this kind of immersive technologies can help to play a role in remote broadcasting. So perhaps you can share or shed some light in this area.
Sure. So yes, remote production and remote broadcasting has come into focus during the pandemic. Because in some countries, there was a very strict hard lockdown, what we call hard lockdown, where the the military came out on the streets and they wouldn't allow anybody to pass, no matter who you are. So one broadcaster that I know, what they did is that they brought in all the people and they locked them inside the television station. So, even the cook, because they need food. So the cook was cooking and they were all sort of locked into the facility and they ran it. But, you can't lock up everybody. It's just simply not possible. You can, get a few operators, you can go get a few producers, but it's not possible to lock everybody up. So what they did, the people who were in the TV station, they were running the physical, like the master control room and the production room. But the rest of the people, the journalists and the production people, they were working from home. And they were producing the videos from home, and they were then sending the videos across, and then those guys were showing it. So that's how they were working. Second problem that one of my other friends in the broadcast industry, he faced was that the journalists go out to report, and when they go out to report, they get infected. They don't know that they're infected. They come back to the newsroom and they infect all the others. So there was a situation where everybody in the newsroom was infected. Of course, thankfully, all of them were not very serious. Some of them were serious. The thick, fat ones were serious, and the rest of them were okay. So they had to shut the entire newsroom down. The whole newsroom, everything was shut down because everybody is infected, and they had to disinfect the premises and all that. At that time, the only possibility was everybody working from home. They are filing the stories from home, and they were sort of trying their best to make sure that the news bulletin goes on air. The government instructed them that no matter what happens, you have to have the news bulletin on it. It cannot be blank. It cannot be this, no matter what happens. So, it was an extremely difficult situation for all my friends, the broadcasters. We tried our best to help them in our own small little way, but it was not enough. I mean, we really couldn't do much. But it brought into focus the fact that you have to be able to, two things. One is that work remotely, and the second, have a backup somewhere else. So that if if this whole situation repeats itself again, then you have some other place somewhere else far away where you can still have people going into the facility and making sure that the news goes on air and all that.
It's an interesting point you made, because this pandemic or this catastrophe has actually shown us that one should be ready, all right? And the dependence on one particular premise, for instance, could prove to be difficult. So perhaps this is where people need another setup or another building or another standby locations which are necessary. Raza, you pointed out that radio with its multi-platform approach, right? Television, perhaps with its newer strategies, right? And these are things that we should look at and lessons that we have learned from the current pandemic. And you also pointed out the interesting aspect of catch-up radio or podcasting. TV has that, but radio is slow to come on, but I think they've started. And this is something which is an exciting, innovation as well, because people don't have the time like they used to have before, right?
Right.
So what does it look like, the future for broadcasters? You work with broadcasters, Raza, and what does it look like with so much competition and companies closing down due to failing ADACs? You can see a lot of advertising revenue going towards social media. What do you predict will be the future for broadcasting?
So the current business case that the television and radio will be free and it will be funded by advertising revenue, I think that model has gone out of the window. It doesn't work anymore. And that model has to change. If the viewer or the listener wants to be entertained and educated and, then they have to pay for just as you are when you're using a phone service, or even if you're using social media, you are not paying the social media company, but you are paying the telco for the bandwidth and all that, right? So you are paying.
Yeah.
So similarly, if you want to have radio and television in your house as a service, then you have to pay for it.
Wasn't that the trend last time? When people had to pay a license fee? I still remember when I was a kid, we used to have a radio and we used to pay for that.
Yeah.
So do you think this is going to happen, or it will be accepted by people to revert back to paying?
Yeah. So actually, if you have HBO in your home, you are paying for it. There is no such thing as a free HBO. Similarly, many other CNBC, etc., etc. All those channels are already paying for it. The second thing is that if you have Astro in Malaysia or in some other country, you have something else, you are already paying for it. It's not free. The only thing is that the government has a policy saying that free to air TV, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
What I'm saying is that free to air TV policy has to change. People are used to paying. They know that if you want premium content, you have to pay. There's no such thing as a free premium content unless it is pirated or something. That's a different thing. But you have to pay for it. So they're used to paying for it and they will pay for it, no problem. Just that the government has changed the policy and said there's no free to air. It has to be paid for and you have to pay X amount of money, and then we will give you the and then once the content is paid for, it has to be premium. It cannot be bad content. It cannot be badly lit newsroom system where the news is yesterday's news and all that. That doesn't work.
So I guess that organizations have to be prepared and revamp themselves, not just in terms of being competitive. Also calls for the type of content that they create, the type of technology that they employ, and really getting into the new technologies that are available. So I think these are things that are so important that broadcasters should adhere to. Raza, I think that's what you are saying, that there is light at the end of the tunnel, but that is something that governments as well as media houses have to take.
Especially the government-owned broadcasters.
So really enlightening talking to you, Mr. Aale Raza. You have so much knowledge in the industry today, and you are dealing with broadcasters. So what's the future like with you and broadcasters?
So fortunately, thanks to your support and thanks to the industry support and thanks to all our customers, we are a growing company and we are in search of some good people to hire. And we have a number of projects in the pipeline, which we need to finish. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, there were a lot of travel restrictions and all that. So we could not go to the customer side to complete the projects that we already have. So we are sort of slowly completing those projects one by one. And we have a future pipeline of a number of projects that we have to do. So we'll do that. So frankly, the future looks great.
It does. And you were one of the few people who actually moved into a new premise, and you kept on having things on social media on the progress of Whiteways. So it's really amazing to see people who also took the opportunities that the pandemic provided and kept on reinventing themselves. So congratulations on that, Mr. Aale Raza.